Hi everyone, I'm Joan DeFronto. I work in our recruitment team at Bloomberg, and welcome to our session on application and interview skills navigating a virtual environment. Today I have my colleagues Alyssa, who is our intern program manager, and also Vitali, who was one of our past interns and returned in a full-time role in analytics and sales this year. They're going to be chatting a little bit later on and helping to take any questions that you have. I'm going to start with a presentation to give you some tips on interviewing and applying for roles, and more specifically talk about the application process at Bloomberg. This year, obviously, we understand it's been a very kind of challenging and ever-changing year for everyone, and I know for students in particular, it's been very challenging. And we really want to share some tips with you to help you make successful applications, and in particular provide those tips around how to interview in virtual formats and how to do assessment days in this format as well. So I'm just going to move on to my slide here, which hopefully everybody can see. Great. And then so just moving on. So in terms of the candidate journey, so like most employers, Bloomberg have moved to a fully virtual format in our recruitment process this year. Having said that, the actual recruitment process hasn't changed that much. So a lot of the elements are still the same. But what we have had to do is obviously move parts of those processes into a virtual format. So there's an increased use of video conference software, and whereas you may have had that kind of experience to go and see the office environment in an assessment day, that's obviously now virtual. But what we have done also is implement some additional parts in our assessment days to give you a bit of a feel for what it would be like to work in the company and work in that kind of environment. So I'm just going to talk you through the different parts that we have in our recruitment process, and I'm going to give you tips along the way for each of these parts. So at Bloomberg, the typical recruitment process that we have is usually a 5-step process. So you'll do an online application, which will contain your CV. So you'll submit your CV through the careers website. There's usually a Q&A as part of that initial application. And the Q&A goes through things like motivations for wanting to work at Bloomberg, in addition to things like backing up why you want to work in the fintech industry. That part of the Q&A is actually a really important part of our process. So I really encourage you to put time into that. That can really make a difference between us deciding whether or not to put forward your application. So I'd encourage everyone to really spend the time writing good answers for that. In addition to that, we have a psychometric test, which usually takes around 20 minutes to complete. Once you've done all that, and if you've successfully passed that test, you'll go through to step 2. We'll review your CVs and recruitment, and if we see that it's a good match, we'll invite you to a pre-recorded video interview. So this is usually a stage where you're given a link to record your answers to a set of questions. You usually have a deadline when to do that, but you can you can be a bit flexible and choose when might be the best part of the day to actually record those answers. You'll submit that to us and we'll review it. If that all looks good, we will invite you to step 3 and step 4, which is our assessment day. So as mentioned, usually in non-COVID circumstances, we would have assessment days taking place in our office. This year, obviously, all of that has gone virtual, so it would be over video conferencing software. But we have tried to make sure we've included the same kind of elements as before. So we're still assessing the same skill set as we have always done, and we've also added in additional parts into that process, which help you get a bit of a better insight into what the roles look like, and also our products. So you'll have a number of assessments that you would do on that day. And then you usually also have some interviews, so usually with team leaders on that same day. Following that, there's usually an additional interview step if you've been successful on the assessment day. And that would be to meet with managers. And that's usually a kind of typical interview format. And if that's all good, then we would be making you an offer for the role. Great. So just moving on to the kind of first stage in that process is around a CV. So I want to go through a few tips to help you build out a strong CV. So these would be the kind of components that you should make sure to include. So obviously your contact information so we can reach you. Usually putting a line or two around your job objective or target and including your availability. Please do make sure that that's clear, because we like to know whether you're looking for full-time roles or internships, and when you're also going to be available for full-time roles. List out your education quite clearly, put a job summary. So make sure you include the company name, your title there, what dates you worked there, and also kind of bullet point the responsibilities that you had in those roles. And then also list out any kind of special skills or competencies. So perhaps you speak other languages, which is great, or you have some coding skills, or maybe you have some additional certifications as well. Perhaps you've done the Bloomberg Market Concepts. So these are all really great things to list out. And then also, you know, if you're involved in any kind of voluntary work, any kind of extracurricular activities, relevant interest, please also list out a section on that. That's a good way of us getting a bit of a better insight into your personality, actually. You know, and it also helps us see, you know, could you be a good cultural fit for the company that you're applying to? So make sure, you know, as a checklist to have each of these points. Now, one thing that we often get a question on is how long a CV should be. What I would say in terms of length, we would usually recommend a one-page CV for graduate experience. That's usually sufficient to include all of those points that I've mentioned there. When you've been working, you know, already for several years and your experience is a bit bulkier, then I would suggest 2 pages. However, for you know, applying for graduate roles or insight or internships, 1 page is definitely enough. So a few tips on your CV design. Make sure overall that the CV is really clear. So it should be in black ink on a white page. Make sure it's spaced out equivalently as well. You know, use the same font size throughout. Make sure it's very consistent. Most importantly, make sure it's easy to read. Usually the recruitment team have hundreds of CVs to look through. So, you know, you're making sure your kind of skills and competencies stand out, the clearer you make your CV. And then what I would suggest is that you save that as a PDF. So PDF format usually looks more professional than Word. So that's a good idea for you to save it in that way. Okay, great. So then moving on to one of the next steps, which is around our assessment days. So a few tips on you know, how you can approach assessment days, in particular in that kind of virtual environment. So as I've mentioned, assessment days now are usually done over video conference software. And you will usually get a link from the company in advance to be able to dial in and test that out. So do make sure that you test out the conference call technology prior to your interview. Lots of different employers are using lots of different types of conference software. So maybe some things will happen over Zoom or Google Meets, or Nexi is the one that we use. They all essentially work in the same way, but there can be little kind of differences between each. So do just make sure you're comfortable with it. One of the additional things that we've introduced as part of our process is a call prior to your assessment day to test out the technology and make sure people are comfortable when they come in on the day and everything works. We'd also suggest just make sure you've got good internet connection as well. Some people, you know, if you have issues on the day, just let us know. But hopefully if you've been able to test that out prior to the actual day, it should all be good. Another couple of tips that we would have, just make sure that your camera and your audio works well. Again, if you can test that out, that's great. In terms of background, I would suggest if you can have a plain background behind you, it works better. I totally understand that might not necessarily be the case for everyone, so don't worry if you can't, but if you can, it can be helpful. And then also just make sure on whatever video conferencing software you're using that you know where the mute and unmute button is. I think this is one of the things that can cause the most kind of issues in any kind of video calls or presentations or whatever, where somebody has a lot of background noise and someone else is trying to talk. So do make sure you are muting and unmuting as appropriate. Probably quite an obvious one, but just make sure your computer is charged and plugged in. You don't want it kind of dying mid-presentation. And a few other tips around just coming across well on that assessment day. So as you would normally for an assessment day, whether it's in-house or virtual, just research the company, make sure you're reading about their products, you read up on their website, you have a good understanding of the culture. Watch any content, for example, videos that the company has. So for example, with Bloomberg, we have a YouTube channel called Inside Bloomberg, and there's loads of additional video content there, including things like employee testimonials, different events and so on. So that's a really good way of actually just understanding what the company is all about. So I'd encourage you to do that. And then if you are interviewing on the day of your assessment day, another thing I would say is, we want you to come across and feel as confident and comfortable as possible. That's really important for you to do your best during an interview. And again, I understand that during this time in particular, there can be lots of distractions and lots of things that come up at home that wouldn't normally be the case in a non-COVID environment. So if there is a distraction, for example, at home, don't be afraid to let your interviewers know, especially if it's going to make you feel more comfortable and less nervous during the interview. For myself, I can really relate with this. So I've got a 2-year-old daughter. When nurseries were closed, she would make quite regular appearances on different meetings and conference calls that I was having. And I think that's just become a kind of normal part of life at the moment, and companies should be very understanding if there are potential distractions. So I would just say, if you're not sure whether or not to mention something and you feel like it's going to make you more comfortable, don't be afraid to say something. And then finally, what I would say, another tip is just be careful about referring to notes during an interview. I think when we're all kind of working from home or dialing in, you might think, oh, it's actually easier just to post a few notes or Post-its around. But actually, in an interview scenario, we really want to get a feel for you as a person. We want to understand your personality. We want to have a good two-way conversation with you as well. And sometimes if you're referring to notes during an interview, that really doesn't come across. Your answers could come across actually as quite rehearsed. So I think my tip there would be just approach it like it's a conversation, and make it kind of as genuine as you possibly can. I think lastly, I would also mention that remember that your interviewers have lots of experience already doing interviews in a virtual format. So, they should be trying to put you at ease as well. And that they've probably been faced with similar situations as well in a virtual situation when things can go wrong or that there are distractions or whatever it may be. So hopefully that kind of, makes you feel a little bit more relaxed and at ease about this setup. So just moving on into assessment day tasks that are pretty common across assessment day formats. So one is a group exercise, and we usually incorporate a group exercise into our assessment days as well. So with the group exercise, this is really an opportunity for the employer to see you in action. And it's also an opportunity for you to really demonstrate your competencies in a practical situation. And these are some of the competencies that we're usually looking out for or assessing in that exercise. So leadership, teamwork, communication, time management, how you work under pressure, and also problem-solving skills. The kind of the biggest tip I would give, especially in that virtual environment where you're doing a group exercise, is to make sure you are collaborating and communicating as best you can with the other people who are in your group. So remember, it's not a competition, and don't approach it as a competition with the people in your group, because the things exactly that we are assessing is how you're going to work well in a team, how you're going to collaborate. In addition to things like how you're presenting the information across. So I think really try and create that rapport with the other people in your group, is essentially that is something we're going to be looking for. And another tip I would give as well, if you are in a group setting, and potentially somebody in your group is maybe they're not kind of bringing forward their ideas or speaking as much, I think it's also a good idea just to check in with them, to ask if they want to kind of add anything to what you've already said. Again, this is a nice way of showing teamwork and bringing others into the conversation and collaborating, which are all things that we look for in Bloomberg. Okay, great. So just moving on to the interview. So I've given a few tips already, but I want to go through a few additional preparation steps that you can take. So the first one that I would say is make sure you're doing your research on the company. So you should be knowing the role as best possible, review the department, look on the company's careers website. Usually, so for example, with Bloomberg, but on most companies as well, you're going to see a section about the company and its products. So do delve a little bit deeper there and read up on them. A tip for Bloomberg that I would say is that, Bloomberg, obviously one of our main products is the Bloomberg Terminal, and we're very well known for news. But in an interview situation, we also want to see what additional research have you done? So what else can you tell us about some of the other products that we sell to our clients? And good examples of that would be things like our enterprise solutions, the different trading solutions that we have, and the data enterprise solutions that we offer to clients as well. So you can find lots of information on the website, and I would encourage you really kind of dig a bit deeper. So you're not just talking about the kind of the usual things about the terminal and the news products that we have. Understand the skills that are required as well. So make sure you've referred back to the job description and think back to your own experience as well, and how you can talk through examples that you have which are relevant. Read any kind of articles, news releases that the company have. Look at the video content as well to help you do your research. The second tip that I would have is to network. And I do have a slide a little bit later on about LinkedIn networking in particular. So I'm going to go into that in a bit more detail. But a few initial tips on networking. So utilize anybody you know who works at the company that you want to apply to discover more. So maybe there are some, past alumni of your university who work there, some colleagues who you can reach out to and talk to careers about. It's also a great opportunity actually using these kind of virtual fairs to discover more too. And at Bloomberg, we run a series of Discover Bloomberg events quite regularly too, to give you an insight into the company and the roles, where you can meet with business representatives. And we usually have virtual networking sessions too. So all of this is a really good way of learning more about the company. So the third tip that I would give is just to do some practice. So make sure you familiarize yourself with the role, determine the areas of your experience which match up to those skills that are in the job description as well. And then do think about examples that can back up your experience. So I'd always caveat the practice part with what I've said before around don't come across as too rehearsed. So I would really kind of try to veer away from writing down your answers and repeating that back, because that's not what we want to see. We want to see a genuine good conversation with the candidate. So I think while it's good to prepare and think about examples, make sure you're not just reading off answers or being overly rehearsed. And then very key as well is understand why you're motivated for the role, and be able to articulate that back as well in the interviews. I think one of the things that, from feedback speaking to candidates and perhaps in particular that kind of manager stage interview, I think people are sometimes surprised that the managers are really, really digging deep down into the motivations for wanting to work at Bloomberg, and perhaps are not expecting conducting such in-depth conversations around motivations. So I would really encourage you to think about that. Think about, if you do join Bloomberg, for example, how you'd like to see your career growing, and how the role that you're applying for fits in with that, and also why you feel you'd be a good addition to the Bloomberg culture and team. Fourthly, I would say make sure you are organized. So, you know, have a pen and paper ready to take any notes, but also think about a few questions that you'd like to ask the interviewers as well. I think it's always good to show your interest at the end of the interview and have a few questions prepared. And then finally, just to recap the virtual interview tips that I mentioned. So make sure you're testing out the tech, is what the technology prior to your call, your interview. Be careful about referring back to notes again. Okay, great. And then just moving on. So I'm not sure if anyone's ever heard of this STAR methodology. So with the STAR methodology, this is a really good way of structuring your answers in a clear, concise way. And this STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. And I'm just going to give you a very quick example here, because I know we're almost running out of time, so I want to very quickly get through this. So let's say the interviewer asked you about a time when you're working on a project at school, somebody maybe wasn't pulling their weight. Think about the situation that you were in, clearly explain that, the task that you had to do, the action that you took, and the results that you gave. So our interviewers often feedback that when candidates actually use this structure in their answers, in particular for those behavioral type questions, it does make a much stronger answer. And then just very quickly moving on to social media and LinkedIn, as I mentioned, I'd really encourage students to create LinkedIn pages. You know, a LinkedIn profile is very useful to have also for looking at jobs on LinkedIn, but if recruiters want to reach out to you, they can then have a good look at your experience. So do make sure you've listed out your education and experience, any skills such as languages that you have or coding skills, follow companies you're interested in working for, and also show that you're open to being contacted about job opportunities. These things actually make it easier for recruiters to find you. So I definitely encourage that. And again, utilize your network there. So, you know, add past alumni or any contacts that you've made. Often as well at companies, when you're speaking to people, you know, we're happy to have you as contacts. And we often post different information about events and so on there. Then just finally, I would say, if you want to sign up to our mailing list where we can contact you with opportunities, feel free to scan this code. I'm going to leave that there just for a couple of minutes, but in the meantime, let me pass over to my colleague Alyssa, who is our interim program manager, to speak for a few minutes on that, and then we'll hand over to Vitaly as well to talk about his experiences, and then we will be able to do a quick Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Joan. Yes, so I'm Alyssa. I'm our internship program manager here at Bloomberg, alongside being a recruiter for our global data department. I'm really happy to be able to speak to you quickly about our internship today, and then Vitaly can add a little bit more color to that with his actual experience being an intern last year. So just as a quick breakdown of our internship that we had this year, we did actually complete a virtual internship, which is obviously slightly different to our usual summer internship, which is completed in-house. But we did onboard 90 interns across 13 different business areas this year virtually. And what that meant for us, it was that we had interns not just in London, which is where they usually come. Everyone comes to London to complete their internship for an in-house one. But this year we had people completing their internship across 25 different countries in a virtual environment, which was a really exciting time for us to be able to still deliver that great internship experience for people over a 7 to 10 week period, but it was obviously slightly different due to COVID. In terms of our internship for next year, we are planning on running an in-house internship for the full 10-week period. However, we have to just see what happens with the world. Unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball at this point in time. So we are looking to run in-house, but we know that if it has to become virtual, that is something we're more than capable of doing again. And if you're interested in our internship, then and you're a final or penultimate year student for 2021, then it would definitely be relevant for you to apply. And if you sign up via the QR code that's on the screen, you will receive further information on how to apply for our internships after this event as well. And just for anyone wondering about our dates this year, we will be running from June 28th until September 3rd. So there are confirmed dates for, 2021. I'm a year ahead of myself, but for 2021, we will be running from those dates. And the internship's a great opportunity to understand our roles at Bloomberg across our different departments that we hold internships in, and also understand the culture, network with great employees and other great interns, and also an opportunity to move into a full-time role the next year or the following internship with us. So just speaking about that conversion piece in terms of converting from an intern to a full-time role, I'm now going to pass over to Vitaly, who joined us as an intern in the summer of 2019. He then went back to university as a campus ambassador and really helped us to drive our recruitment efforts. And then he came back to us recently and joined as a full-time employee in the analytics and sales program. So I'll pass over to you, Vitaly, to talk a little bit about that.
Thank you, Alyssa. Hi, everyone. I'm Vitaly. Now working in Bloomberg in analytics in an emerging markets team. And so, yeah, my journey with Bloomberg started exactly 2 years ago, like literally maybe 2 years and 1 week ago. So I've applied for an internship. I was in a second year of uni. So my second year just started at King's. I was doing European politics. So it has nothing to do with finance, nothing to do with news, nothing to do with anything related to like a financial world. So don't worry about that. I applied, went through all the 5 stages which were mentioned before, and got my offer for internship. Did internship last summer, so from 10 weeks in summer, and got my offer for the full-time role. And regarding internship, so the internship itself is 10 weeks. It's called Sales and Analytics. So your week is divided into 2 days in analytics, 2 days in sales. So Monday, Tuesday, it's sales. Wednesday, Thursday is analytics, and on Friday you have like a mix of both. And so Bloomberg internship is really different from anything else because you actually make an impact. So, for instance, when I was in sales, I was covering a Ukrainian team because I'm Ukrainian. So half of my internship was in the Ukrainian team, and half of my internship was in kind of a London sell-side team. And in London sell-side team, once a week, I was visiting Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Nomura, visiting clients on a regular basis every day. And so like I could feel that I was kind of bringing an impact to the company, which was really, really cool. And that's sales. So you're divided into basically in your, like if you speak in your language, that's how you're going to be aligned to your sales team. So I spoke Russian and Ukrainian, so I covered the Ukrainian market. And in analytics, your day is divided into proactive work and reactive work. So in the reactive work, you basically answer clients' queries, help clients answer their questions. And in the proactive side, you kind of reach out to clients, look for new opportunities, trying to promote our enterprise products, terminal, and so on and so forth. And yeah, after those 10 weeks, I successfully got an offer to join Bloomberg full-time. And so I finished university 3 months ago and now started working for Bloomberg. And the only tip I can give you guys, I was in your shoes two years ago, basically. Never think that it's too early to apply. Because I was like this. I was like, my first year, I was like, yeah, I still have 3 years of university. Then I will do masters. I have so much time, blah, blah, blah. Don't think like this. The earlier you start your journey of applying, of internships, the better it is. So I would recommend start as soon as possible. We have different roles. We have internship. We also have inside weeks. So definitely check out our website because there's so many different opportunities for penultimate year, for first year students. And yeah, good luck with everything.
Great, thanks, Alyssa and Vitaly. So I will leave the QR code on for a few more minutes. If anybody wants to scan that to register, we can mail opportunities to you. I did just want to make a mention as well that we are on our Bloomberg booth all day and available for questions, and we will run a live Q&A session later on at 3:30.
Fabulous. I've just joined. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Lizzie.
Hello. Thank you so much for that. Loads of interesting insights, loads of top tips. I feel like if anyone gets anything wrong on the CV now, I mean, they shouldn't, because you've just given so many great tips there. So thank you very much. And for everyone else who doesn't know who I am, I'm Lizzie from Rate My Placement. So I have the pleasure of asking some questions and delving into what it's really like to work at Bloomberg. So I'll just crack on if that's okay. We've got about 15 minutes. So the first question, so Joan, I'm going to direct this one at you. So what would you say makes Bloomberg stand out from its competitors?
So a good question. I would say it's actually the working environment at Bloomberg, which I think is quite unique as a company. Personally, for me, I feel that I work with great people. I think it's a very collaborative environment, but it's also very friendly and supportive. I went out on maternity leave a couple of years ago, and when I came back, it's obviously a kind of difficult transition to make, but I felt really supported by my team, and I think that kind of makes it a great place to work, and you meet very kind of interesting, intelligent people there as well. So definitely for me, I think that kind of working environment that we have and the support that we have from colleagues makes it a very unique place to work.
Fabulous. Is there anything else from Alyssa's point of view that you wanted to add to that? What do you think makes Bloomberg stand out from its competitors?
Yeah, I really think what makes us stand out is, and to Joan's point as well, I completely agree with everything that Joan says. I love working here, and the people that we work with makes it. But the other thing is that we get to be really innovative every single day. And if you have an idea at Bloomberg, you don't have to be at a certain level or have a certain amount of tenure to get that idea to happen and make a difference in the work you do. And that's true across all the departments. So if you have an idea that's going to help us to make a difference to our clients, going to help us in the way that we get things done and make things more efficient, then that's something that's really, really important to us and is taken on board right from the get-go, which is really special and not something you get the opportunity to do at all organizations. So for me, that's something that is really cool, is you can make a difference from day one.
And that's great. And I remember, Vitaly, you mentioned that as well. You said you had real experience from day one getting stuck into different activities. So I just wanted to pick up on that really and ask you, from if you can think back to when you applied, what was it about Bloomberg when you were looking at all the different kind of companies? What is it that really stood out to you about applying to them?
Yeah, this is going back to Joan's point. So try to find someone who works in Bloomberg, because for me, it was basically a friend of mine, worked in Bloomberg. She did her internship 2 years ago. And she told me, Vitaly, come to the office, I'll show you the office. And the minute I stepped into the office, I was like, I want to work here. And it was a minute I realized Bloomberg is the place. And then I went back home, I started Googling how to apply, how to do the CV and stuff. And so I think if you guys get a chance to come in the office, of course, it's difficult now with all the what's happening in the world. But Bloomberg is a different place. I mean, as soon as you are there, you realize that you don't want to leave it, And so that's why it's so difficult working from home as well, especially starting as well. But
yeah, definitely. What in terms of culture, how would you describe that? So I know a lot of students are very interested in the culture. Obviously not maybe now because we're working from home, but yeah, it would be great just to hear your thoughts, Vitaly, on that.
So so on our internship, we were 42 people. Out of 42 people, probably with 15 people, every day I wake up and I WhatsApp them good morning. So we have a group of people and we're still basically best friends. And this was 10 weeks of internship. And this is how close we became. Because I think Bloomberg has a different, just different dimension of of diversity, inclusion, and transparency, and everything works. All those things work so well that once you're there, you feel like family basically. I mean, it's been a year time, and we still speak every day with friends. So I can only encourage everyone to apply because we're the best. So.
Oh, that sounds lovely. Sounds like it's a big family. Excellent. Okay, so we've got a few questions from the audience as well. So this is a great one that's just come in. So Joan, I'll send it your way. So what's your advice on approaching a recruiter through LinkedIn? Do you think it's suitable to connect with them and start a conversation out of the blue?
Mm-hmm. So I would say definitely connect with recruiters. We have students who connect with us every day, and in particular, after we've done events, we have a lot of people reaching out to us. What I would say is, because we usually have hundreds of requests, we don't necessarily always have the time to reply back to everyone. However, we do post a lot of different events and things that are happening at the company. So if you follow our posts, is actually a really good way of learning about different events and opportunities. And usually, as I mentioned, we run different Discover Bloomberg events where there are networking sessions. So there will be opportunities to speak to all sorts of members of the team. So yeah, do it, definitely. Add recruiters on LinkedIn. It might be a little bit challenging for us to get back to every message. So just caveat with that.
Excellent. And building on that one then, so Alyssa, this is a great question from Charlotte. What are some of the top skills or qualities that you look for in students?
Yeah, so I think there's a few. So obviously there's the kind of skills and experience that we look for in the specific jobs that we're recruiting for, which is always going to be listed in that job requisition and that job description. But I think some of the things that are really important to us here at Bloomberg are around our cultural values. So are you someone who's a problem solver, who's going to speak up and, put yourself out there even when it's a little bit hard? I also think another value that's really important to us is someone who's willing to put their hand up for things, even if they're a little bit uncomfortable. And I think that's the same across a lot of organizations when you're starting, whether it be in an internship, an Insight Week, or a full-time role. If you're willing to put yourself out there and say, yep, I'll give that a try, that really opens up doors. And I think for me in my career at Bloomberg, that is something that has really enabled me to getting involved in some really cool projects and experiences, because I was just happy to say, yep, I'll try that and see how it goes. So I think that's a skill that we really look for here as well at Bloomberg.
And I think that's a brilliant point, because I think a lot of people are scared of failure, but it's all about trying, working out what you can do. And do you feel like at Bloomberg that that's a great place that students can come in and try things and help them develop the business and not be scared of failure? Yeah,
absolutely. And I think the benefit here is that there's so many roles within our roles. So there's so many different projects and things that you can get involved in. So you might put your hand up for something and you think it's something you're interested in doing, and then you do that project and you're like, actually, that's not exactly where I want to head, but that was great experience to have. Or you might do a project and be like, this is exactly what I want to do, and it helps shape your future career. So having those experiences, to build your professional brand within the organization, to build up your skill set, is really important. And at Bloomberg, we have the opportunity to work not only on projects within our individual team, but also within the wider organization. And that ability to build up those skills and work with colleagues across different departments is something that's really cool, and I think such a great experience, especially when you're first starting out in your career.
Definitely. And I just think if you're doing internships and placements, the whole benefit is testing, as you said. So it's seeing whether you like it, and it's brilliant, Vitaly, that you've loved it so much and come back. I guess one question that would be brilliant to ask you and find out is, what do you think the biggest things that you learned were through your internship?
So I've learned, or what was the question?
Yeah, the biggest things that you've learned through doing your internship.
So I think for me, the biggest thing that I've learned is, finance itself, because as I said, I was a non-finance student. And so out of 10 weeks of the internship, I basically almost every day we had trainings. So both on Bloomberg products, on enterprise products, and on finance side as well. So I think that was a big part of what I've learned, was actually the knowledge itself. And I think I learned a lot about myself as well. So for instance, I never knew I was like a leader, like a leadership skills. And I think that kind of, even the interview process, like out of all those 5 steps, it kind of opens you up, and you can like see what your like strong sides are. And so for me, I think the big thing was leadership. I've never thought that I would be I never thought that I'm a leader or something, but I think kind of throughout the internship, I opened it up in myself, and I'm kind of trying to develop it more and more now. And so, yeah, I would say those 2 things, definitely.
Yeah, really, really good point, because a lot of students, it is quite scary and nerve-wracking to apply and go on to these internships. From your experience, was there anything really, really challenging that you've got through, and then you can help other students who are thinking, oh, I can't do that?
I think what was the hardest part for me was applying from a European politics course to a company which is which is at the top, and like for me it was very scary, like to believe in myself at the first place, because I was like, yeah, I will apply, but probably nothing will happen. And so what I would recommend is really like believing in yourself and kind of doing your best. And like if you do your best, there's no reason why you wouldn't why you wouldn't get in. And the second thing that I would advise, I would also advise this to everyone who applies: there are no two same people. So we're all different, and it's very easy, like especially on the assessment days when there are a few people, like you're with other people, you're trying to copy someone else. We're all different, and people in Bloomberg employs people for different reasons. And don't try to copy someone else. Just be yourself. And I think that's the best advice I can give, is just be yourself. And if you are the right fit, then we will see. There's no reason for you to like fake it or like trying to pretend something. Just be yourself. And yeah, I think that's the best way of going about it.
Very motivational. I think everyone at home is thinking, yes, I can do it now. I love it. Okay, brilliant. We've got a few more minutes for questions. So I guess one thing that I wanted to cover, so have loads of amazing insights and tips about how to succeed. And it'd be great just to hear from Joan and Alyssa. Have you seen any really big mistakes that you could share with students so that they don't do them, basically?
And do you mean mistakes in the recruitment process that people do?
Yeah, recruitment process, but actually anywhere, if there's any tips for them.
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I think in the process, one of the things, and I refer to it in the presentation, is do try to come across as genuine as possible. And I think I go back to Vitali's point as well around being yourself and doing your best with that. Sometimes candidates will rehearse their answers, and it can just sound like they've read an answer off the website or off the job description, and actually that really does not come across well. And it's actually quite difficult for the interviewers to assess whether you're genuinely passionate and motivated for this role. So that would be one of the things I would say. And the other thing would be around motivations. I think people sometimes don't put enough importance on that, and being able to articulate your motivations adequately in the interview. So I would just reiterate my point around that too. Really think about why you want to work for this company and in that environment as well, and be able to explain that.
Yeah.
And I think from my perspective, there's an obvious one around video conferencing, and ensuring that you have an appropriate background is really important. So even if it's got stuff behind you, just make sure that's appropriate and you're happy for a potential future employer to see what's happening in your background. And then the other thing is use your network. So I think that's something that we've mentioned already, but sometimes one of the biggest mistakes I see is someone who has the potential to have great networks. The university has a campus ambassador from the employer that they're wanting to work for. They know people who potentially work at the organization, but they're not utilizing those networks in order to help them out and prepare for the process. Anyone you know who's working in an organization that you'd like to be at has insider tips and things that they can tell you, which you wouldn't be able to find from the website. And then you can leverage that in your interview and your experiences so that you can put yourself at the top and say, hey, I not only know what's happening on the website and the things that everyone can read, but I also have this inside information, and this helps me to be motivated for this role, or I can see this opportunity in X, Y, and Z. So really utilize any networks you have and make meaningful connections. It's not just about linking with someone on LinkedIn, but what does that network then mean that you can then do better in a process?
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much. I think that's all we've got time for. There are a few more questions from the audience. So what I suggest is if the questions haven't been asked, pop into Bloomberg booth. And then, you said you've got a Q&A. What time was that again?
So that's going to be at 3:30 today.
Brilliant. Okay, so great Q&A. Get your questions ready. But I just want to say thank you so much. What a great session. Feel really enlightened about Bloomberg, and thank you so much again. And we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lizzie.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.